Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross, and it is time to preview the 2020 Australian Open, the first slam of the year, the happy slam, the sleep deprivation slam. There's so much to look forward to. This is fantastic. I can't wait for major tennis season once again. But I do have to start on a more somber note, which is the tragedy, the absolutely heartbreaking things that are going on in Australia with the widespread bushfires across the country/continent. And I just want to say thoughts, well wishes, condolences for all that's been lost. And I'm proud of how the tennis community has supported the efforts to try to aid in recovery, but Mother Nature is such a beast sometimes, and a lot bigger than us, obviously, and this is an example. So I hope that the tournament can go on with everyone without health being sacrificed. That's the first and foremost, most important thing. And I think if that can happen, the tennis can aid in the healing process and aid in the fundraising process. And I think, again, the tennis community has done a lot of good things already. So you have to start off like that. You know, I have to send my well wishes, and Monday Match Analysis stands with Australia through this. All right, this is the 2020 Australian Open preview. If you're new to the channel, here's how it works. I'll go quarter by quarter. I will talk about the top seeds, sometimes not in a lot of depth, just name drop them, but I'll go over the top seeds. I will name a dark horse, which is the player who I deem to be the most dangerous player in a quarter who is unseeded. I will then put one seeded player on upset alert, obviously the seeded player who I deem most likely to lose early. I will also name a popcorn match, which is the match that I believe is the most exciting, the most intriguing, and it gives me a chance to highlight some of the matches that I'll have my eye on in the early going. And then I will predict a quarterfinal result for each quarter. That'll bring us to the final weekend, and I will give predictions on the semifinals and the finals at the Aussie Open. The first Monday of every slam is a full 30 minutes of comment response. So look out on the community tab on the channel. Sometime early on Sunday, Eastern time, I will put a post up and you guys can comment. And that's the best time to get comments answered and read, because the entire show is dedicated to comment response. Before I get started, a couple things that I'll be watching out for in general. One, I should note that the manufacturer of the hard courts at the Aussie Open has changed. Used to be a California-based company. It is now a Spanish company. It's the same company that supplies courts, manufactures courts at the ATP Cup, at least in Brisbane and Sydney. So it's a partnership with Tennis Australia, really. The company has also done the courts at the O2 Arena at the ATP Finals in the past decade. And they've done, what else have they done? Oh, the Paris Masters in Bercy, and also the Davis Cup in Madrid this year was also done by this Spanish company. The idea for Tennis Australia was to keep the same type of court, which is a blue acrylic plexi cushion court. And the goal, it sounds like, from reading the official statements from Tennis Australia addressing the new court surface, is that they're really going for the same thing. And to my eye, watching Sydney, watching Brisbane, it seems like more of the same. It seems like a relatively fast hard court. It's certainly the one thing that definitely jumped out to me was that this is a low bouncing hard court. Perhaps a little bit less lively than what I'm used to seeing at the Australian Open, but I think the safest way to go about this is to assume until further notice that the conditions are going to be the same at the Australian Open. So going into this, I'm predicting matches assuming that the conditions are going to be the same. I think that that's the safest route to go, and I'm not confident that anything is going to be substantially different this year at the Australian Open. What will be substantially different, without a doubt, is that players have more tennis under their belts. Because the ATP Cup, which was a new addition to the schedule, was more physical and more emotional than any tournament that was previously scheduled before the Australian Open. And that'll be something interesting to look out for, because that's different. Already, we've seen Alex de Minaur, who was playing really good tennis and could have made some noise. He had to withdraw from his home major because of an abdominal tear that he suffered while playing at the ATP Cup. But you look at players like Medvedev and Nadal and Djokovic, top seeds, they all went far in at the ATP Cup. They all played some really long physical matches, and I have to wonder if that's going to play an effect. Roger Federer skipped the ATP Cup for family reasons. Again, will that play an effect? So that's something different to look out for. But in general, I think with more players healthy, with more players traditionally well rested, you get a little bit fewer surprises at the Australian Open. I'd say expectations fall a little bit closer to reality at the Australian Open, and it's also a little bit harder to predict just because we have less data points coming into the Australian Open. So this will be fun. I'm anticipating a pretty chalky tournament, and when the draw came out, my general reactions, and by the way, nothing really stuck out. To me, it's a pretty mundane, a pretty reasonable, balanced draw. But I would say the two toughest quarters are Nadal's quarter and Medvedev's quarter. I'd say the easiest quarter is by far Federer's quarter, and I think Djokovic's quarter falls somewhere in between the two. There's our thumbnail. It's the beautiful Rod Laver Arena. And let's get started here. Going quarter by quarter, we start with Nadal's quarter. The top seeds are Rafa, Thiem, Gael Monfils, Karen Khachanov, Nick Kyrgios, Felix Auger-Aliassime, Pablo Carreño Busta, and Taylor Fritz. My dark horse in this quarter is Kevin Anderson, who I believe is the single most dangerous unseeded player in this draw. The tennis he was playing was reminiscent of the top 10 Kevin Anderson that we got used to. I mean, he's got the big serve, but it just looked like the consistency was back. The confidence off the ground was back. He's still not a creative player. He still doesn't really come up with a lot of spectacular shot making, but what you get out of Kevin Anderson is just a really good combination of big serving and consistent big hitting from the baseline, packaged with a pretty good pretty good movement, which makes him just a tough guy to break given the serve, and then someone who, if you give enough second serves, is just going to be able to dig his teeth into baseline rallies. And he's a tough guy to beat, and I think for Dominic Thiem, it's a disastrous player to possibly have to play in the third round, especially given Thiem's trouble with big servers on fast surfaces. He lost to Sam Querrey at Wimbledon. His only loss at the ATP Finals was to Matteo Berrettini. And I haven't looked too deeply into this, but there are a good number of examples of Dominic Thiem struggling with some of the best servers in the sport on quick surfaces. Upset alert in this quarter, I don't really see it. I put none. The way I do this, my process is I fill out my bracket. I pick every single match, And in this quarter, it just so happens that I don't really have anyone. I just don't have anyone, any of the seeds losing early, so I can't have an upset alert. I mean, if there's anyone, probably that third round match that I have circled between Anderson and Thiem that I think could be dangerous for Thiem. But at the end of the day, I do pick Dominic Thiem in that match. I just think it could get shaky for him. Popcorn match is Taylor Fritz and Kevin Anderson. Um, that's just a pretty high level match for round two, as far as I'm concerned. Fritz is still on a good trajectory. He had an excellent 2019, and we'll see if he continues to develop or if his movement and his athleticism, which is not quite at the level of some of the players his age that have broken into the top 10, maybe that sees him level out in the 20s slash the teens in the rankings. That could be where we see Fritz level out. But interesting 2020 upcoming for Fritz. Anderson, a guy who came back from injury in 2019 and never found it. So this is a good match between two players who there's a good chance they'll be playing top 30 tennis in the second round here. My quarterfinal is Nadal over Dominic Thiem. I do think that if Nadal has first strike tennis working here, this is interesting. This is an interesting match, and I'm not sure those two are going to get there. Let's talk about Nadal first before we get to that match, because Nadal, it's not that he has a hard draw. It's just there's some tough ones for him that could be waiting for him in the fourth round, where he'll probably get either Nick Kyrgios, who beat him on a hard court last year in Acapulco and is so dangerous with the things he can do when he's focused, when he's on, or Karen Khachanov, who's also a tough matchup for Nadal because he handles Rafa's cross-court forehand with his 6'6" frame and a strong backhand. Also, the big serving that Khachanov brings. He's played a lot of close matches with Nadal, so it's going to be a tough matchup in the fourth round for Rafa. Thiem will have a cozier fourth round match, in my opinion. Could be Felix Auger-Aliassime, could be Gael Monfils. Either one, I'm almost inclined to say that the Anderson match could be more dangerous for Thiem than his fourth round match. But if Nadal meets Thiem, I'm gonna go with Nadal because Nadal does a really good job he's done a really good job of getting the net, of winning court position against Thiem, of attacking his backhand, playing first strike tennis. But I gotta say, as you'll see, well, I'm not gonna have any spoilers. I'm gonna leave it at that right now, and I want to move on to the next quarter. Daniil Medvedev's quarter features Alexander Zverev, David Goffin, Stan Wawrinka, Andrey Rublev, John Isner, Nicolas Basilashvili, and Jo-Wilfried Tsonga. My dark horse in this quarter is Casper Ruud, who had a very, very impressive ATP Cup. He's in his early 20s. He's someone to watch out for age-wise, but he beat John Isner, he beat Fabio Fognini, then he took Daniil Medvedev to a tiebreak. He's a player with a good head on him, athletic, and a really good forehand. He doesn't strike me as a fast court player, but he's still shown me enough that I feel he deserves dark horse designation here in this quarter. My upset alert is Alexander Zverev, who double faulted a lot at the ATP Cup, who seemed to be fighting internally with his team at the ATP Cup, and again, I think I've thrown out the word fragile a lot when describing Zverev, and instead of just throwing out that word, I want to make sure I'm clear about what that means. When I call Zverev fragile, it means that at any moment he can lose all of his confidence. That doesn't mean he's not going to look good in the first round, or that doesn't mean he's going to lose in the second or the third, but as soon as adversity strikes Alexander Zverev, his game takes a nosedive. He can't handle it. He goes downhill. He doesn't believe in himself suddenly. He's smashing rackets. He is, you know, fighting with his team. And his game's going downhill. So, to me, any match can pretty much be a bombshell for Zverev, but I have him certainly losing to Andrey Rublev. I have Rublev beating Goffin in the third round. I think Rublev is going to play really well at this tournament as long as he's not tired. He'll come into Australia having played 12 matches, which is a lot because he played Doha, then he played Adelaide. He won Doha. He's in the finals in Adelaide at the time of this recording. So it's a lot of match play. But 22-year-old, beginning of the year, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I'm going to say that Rublev has enough gas in the tank here to make a deep run in Australia. He's playing such great tennis, and the quick surface should suit Rublev. He takes the ball on the rise, high margin, aggression off both wings, pumping more aces, in my estimation. Second serve still isn't strong, but I think he has enough to overcome that. It's looking like his legs are stronger. He's moving better. He's just on such a good trajectory, and he'll be joining the top fleet very soon. He'll be joining the ranks of Tsitsipas and Medvedev and Zverev, in my opinion, very soon. So I have Rublev taking out Goffin. I have Rublev taking out Zverev, reaching the semifinals. Medvedev has some really tough ones. He's got Francis Tiafoe in the first round. That is the popcorn match in this quarter. Medvedev also could draw Jo-Wilfried Tsonga in the third round. Tsonga is someone who's going to get to the net a lot, and I still feel that Medvedev's flatter hitting can sometimes pose a problem. Sometimes he doesn't really quite have his passing shots going, and I think that's one way where you can give Medvedev some trouble. I think the serve volley is a good play against Medvedev as well. So we'll see if Tsonga can implement some of that. In the fourth round, Medvedev can draw Stan Wawrinka, a player who's excellent at generating pace off of both wings, a player who really doesn't mind a ball that's low, especially on his backhand. I mean, Wawrinka generates the kind of racket head speed where he has no problem. He's not going to have much of a problem attacking Medvedev's cross-court backhand if Medvedev leaves it short, whereas a lot of players really can't do much with it because it stays low, because there's often not a lot of pace on it. Wawrinka and Medvedev played at the U.S. Open, and I got the sense from watching that match that if Wawrinka was just able to make more balls, he really could have won that match. It's a really tough one for Medvedev. Then after that, he faces his countryman Rublev, who I think is playing great tennis. So Medvedev has the worst draw out of anyone, out of the top four seeds, I should say. To me, it's Daniil. Casper Ruud, by the way, is in a really weak section with world number 99 in the first round. I don't want to butcher his name, so I won't even say it. But he's ranked 99, and I've never seen him play. The winner of Cecchinato and... No, that's not Cecchinato. Is that Cecchinato? They misspelled his name. Yeah, that's Marco Cecchinato in the first round for Zverev. That could be interesting. I have Zverev in that with this. I mean, just off his serve alone on a fast court, I think Zverev should be able to get the better of Marco Cecchinato. But Casper Ruud is in a section with Zverev, Cecchinato, Verdasco, Basilashvili, and that's about it. It's a really good section, a wide open section. So we could see anyone out of there. But then I'd say the winner of Goffin and Rublev definitely makes the quarterfinal there. I'm really confident in Medvedev's game right now. I think he's in a really good place, and this is what I think will be his best major when it comes to how the surface suits his game, being a little bit quicker than New York, being a little bit lower bouncing than New York. I think those two things will help him. Being well rested will help him because his game is so physical. I think there's a lot going for Medvedev, and I do have him coming out of the quarter. Medvedev Tiafoe in round one, by the way. I just want to quickly address that because that's the popcorn match. Tiafoe is also someone who can do some interesting things against Medvedev by taking a lot of pace off the ball, keeping the ball short in the court. I think that we could see. I think we could see Tiafoe do some interesting things against Medvedev. He's not at a high enough level to really compete, so I wouldn't really be surprised if that's straight sets. But look out for Tiafoe using a lot of backhand slice, a lot of drop shots, a lot of no pace balls off his backhand, and that'll be another good test, or could be another good test. Wouldn't be surprised if Medvedev blows him out, to be honest. Moving on to Roger Federer's quarter, you have top seeds in Matteo Berrettini, Fabio Fognini, Denis Shapovalov, Grigor Dimitrov, Guido Pella, and Hubert Hurkacz. The best draw out of the top four seeds, in my opinion, goes to Roger Federer. I have Federer. He'll face Stevie Johnson in the first round, Filip Krajinovic in the second. Hubert Hurkacz has put together a lot of really good results. Someone was among the most impressive players at the ATP Cup, beat Dominic Thiem, Borna Coric, Diego Schwartzman at the ATP Cup. But Federer's played him once, beat him pretty comfortable 6-4, 6-4, and really bothered Hurkacz with his slice backhand cross court. A really interesting third round match in this one should be Grigor Dimitrov and Denis Shapovalov, both players who are outside the top 10, both players who I think could be inside the top 10 very soon. Jannik Sinner is in this quarter, sharing the title of Dark Horse with Riley Opelka. As John Isner fades, Riley Opelka rises. And it's interesting. I think they're on a very like parallel crossroads. But Opelka gets Fognini in the first round. He beat him at the U.S. Open last year. And again, I mean, when Fognini faces big servers on fast surfaces, always gives Fabio issues. So, I mean, again, I'm picking Opelka with the upset in the first round there over Fognini. Borna Coric also has a big serving American in Sam Querrey, and Coric hasn't looked very good to me early on, defending a lot of points, quarterfinal points here at the Aussie. A lot of pressure for a player with not a lot of confidence right now. I've seen some questions, by the way, with what's going on with Borna Coric. The simple answer is he can't generate any offense because his forehand is just brutal right now. And I think the back issues that he's had, I think, threw off probably his hitting mechanics, and he has no confidence generating off his forehand. It's such a tough place to be in. I mean, that's how most players create offense in men's tennis. It's off their forehand. He's got a really good backhand, but you just can't get enough off of a backhand. You need to be able to have a forehand where you're able to accelerate and attack, especially when there's not a lot of pace on the ball. And Coric just he's not comfortable finishing points. Players are able to have so much success defending against Coric because he doesn't have that approach shot that he can rely on, especially on the forehand side. What else do we have here? Denis Shapovalov against Jannik Sinner in round 2. I don't know if Sinner's legs are ready. I'm not sure his legs are strong enough yet to beat really good players. But I think from now on, whenever Jannik Sinner is floating around the draw, he's going to be a dark horse. He's going to be an early popcorn. I mean, I think that's how it's going to be, because he's super talented. He'll rise up the ranks this year. So this will be really fun to see. Definitely one a match I'll have my eyes on is Shapovalov Sinner in round 2. Matteo Berrettini is the luckiest player in this draw. Plain and simple. The number 8 seed has the weakest 8th by far, and I see him making the quarterfinal. I don't really see who can take him out. He's got Tennys Sandgren in the second round. Sam Querrey, I have him in the third round. I mean, it could be Coric. If it's Coric, same thing. Guido Pella, Riley Opelka, maybe Fabio Fognini in the fourth round. I mean, he's got the weakest 8th in the entire draw. So Federer and Berrettini in the quarterfinals. It's a really good quarterfinal, though, for Federer. A quarterfinal that I could totally see Federer, just like in the U.S. Open, I could totally see Federer winning this one pretty easily and having plenty of energy going into the semifinal. It's a really positive thing for Federer, because he could have drawn Dominic Thiem. He could have drawn Stefanos Tsitsipas. And those two guys would have been way different stories for Roger Federer. He was really hoping, I'm sure, even Zverev's given him trouble, but he was probably hoping for Berrettini, mostly Berrettini, or Zverev, and he got his guy. So that's a really good thing for Federer. Let us move on to the next quarter. And again, guys, it's chalk. I know I have the top seed moving on. And I'll tell you, just so I give you a little bit more, I'll tell you who I think is most likely of the top 4 seeds to not make the semifinal. But nothing was convincing enough here for me to pick against the any of the top 4 seeds. But I will tell you after this who I think will be most likely in my mind. Djokovic is in a quarter with Stefanos Tsitsipas, Roberto Bautista Agut, Diego Schwartzman, Dusan Lajovic, Dan Evans, and Milos Raonic. Tsitsipas, you would think this would be a super dangerous tournament for him. He's defending quarterfinal points, or semifinal points. He played Nadal. Did he play Nadal in the semifinals? Yeah, I think he did. Yes, right? Or the quarters. I'm forgetting. RBA is on a 9-match win streak. Really dangerous. Diego Schwartzman, his court's a little speedy for a player who doesn't have a serve like Schwartzman. Dusan Lajovic was really impressive for Team Serbia at the ATP Cup. It's a little speedy for him, these courts, but really great ball striker in Lajovic. Doesn't move very well, but when he does get there, he gets it back. He can defend. Dan Evans has looked rejuvenated. Really good. Lots of great offensive weapons for Dan Evans. And then Milos Raonic, still kind of on a steady decline, and I don't really know what to make of him. So Djokovic is, again, kind of in between. I don't think it's as difficult as Nadal, just because Tsitsipas, I don't think, is in a great place right now. And RBA is not someone... Well, RBA is someone to watch for in the quarterfinals. But not quite as difficult as Nadal. He doesn't have those early bombshells. He doesn't have his version of a Kyrgios or a Khachanov in the fourth round. He's got a tough quarterfinal, but so does Nadal and Dominic Thiem. And Medvedev has that, in my opinion, in Andrey Rublev. Medvedev has more bombshells. Then again, it's not really like a Roger Federer situation where you really don't see anyone very threatening. Because Tsitsipas, RBA, they're real threats. All in all, I think Djokovic should be pretty happy with this. My dark horse is Marin Cilic, which, this is definitely the first time he's been in consideration for dark horse, but he looks a little bit better. And now we're gonna find out: was he just playing injured all of 2019, or is he old? Is he old or is he injured? We'll find out very soon. But Cilic is someone. If he's well rested, if his body feels good again, maybe he comes in with some newfound confidence. I really didn't like what I was seeing from him in 2019, though. I mean, just going for the line on every single shot. He looked desperate to end every point in under 3 shots. Just, it was like he could not bear to play a long rally. And maybe that was because he was in discomfort or didn't have confidence in his movement and just felt like he had to end every point quickly. But I want to give Cilic respect here, and he at least deserves dark horse designation as an unseeded player. He's got to be up there for the most dangerous unseeded player in this quarter. Upset alert is Dan Evans. I like what I'm seeing from Dan Evans, so this isn't something I was really excited to pick, but a first round match with Mackie McDonald could make him work really hard. And then a second round match with Nishioka could also make him work even harder. I mean, those are two guys who get a ton of balls back. And when you play those kind of players, you got to bring your A game. They won't beat themselves, Nishioka and Mackie McDonald. So Dan Evans cannot afford a drop off, or he'll lose in one of the first 2 rounds, because those are tough opponents if you don't have your A game. I especially like what I've seen from Nishioka. Mackie McDonald, that's not that bad a first round draw for Dan Evans, but Nishioka's played really good tennis. Early popcorn, Tsitsipas and Kohlschreiber, not bad. But all in all, Tsitsipas had a rather concerning look. He was very streaky in 2019. He can play great, he can play not so great, because he's emotional and his confidence swings up and down like a roller coaster. And I get the sense that it's on the wrong, that it's on there's peaks and troughs. I get the sense that his confidence is closer to a trough right now. He said he was having trouble focusing at the ATP Cup, and it doesn't look like he's turned any kind of corner mentally, from a maturity standpoint. And again, he has great, in some ways he's great mentally. I mean, his competitiveness, his drive, his work ethic on the court, his will to win, that's all great. But he is so darn emotional that he gets so hard on himself and loses confidence, and he kind of seemed like a mess at the ATP Cup. So normally a guy who I think would be very dangerous against Novak Djokovic, but I really think RBA's in a better place. He's going to make every ball. Low bouncing, fast hard court, Bautista Agut's best surface. And I see him beating Tsitsipas because Stefanos is going to need his best game against RBA. If he has it, he's got way more firepower. Stefanos should win that match, but I don't see Tsitsipas bringing his best to Australia for some reason. That's my sense. So I have Djokovic beating RBA. Tough matchup for Novak. What happens? He has to work hard. He wins, but should have to work hard. RBA makes him work hard. Before I get to the final weekend, I'm inclined to say that I think the most volatility lies in the first quarter, where I'm not really sure what we're going to get out of Dominic Thiem, and I'm not really sure what we're going to get out of Rafael Nadal, who I'm concerned about physically. With the history of his hard court durability, with him admitting that he was in physical discomfort by the end of ATP Cup, but also just by the notion and the virtue of him playing such a tough and physical ATP Cup. I'm a little bit concerned about Nadal and how he's looked physically. He also looked not very comfortable defending by the tail end of that ATP Cup. By the way, didn't look very good in a bunch of those matches. Loses to David Goffin, doesn't look good against Nishioka, takes a while to get going against Novak Djokovic. So I think if we're going to see something weird happen, I think it's going to be in the first quarter. Nadal's quarter, number 1 seed. Whether that be, again, really uncertain about what kind of tennis Dominic Thiem is going to bring, and a little bit uncertain about the tennis Nadal is going to bring. It's hard to see Nadal, though, with how consistent he's been in the last 2 years when healthy. It's just really impossible to pick against him. But I do have some suspicions about his form and his health. Here's my final weekend. After what I just said, you won't be too surprised to see I have Medvedev finally getting over the hump against Nadal. In one respect, you might say, well, Nadal has beaten Medvedev in so many high-profile matches in the last 4 months. I mean, he beat him handedly in Toronto. Then he beat him in the in the 5-set U.S. Open final. Then he beat him at the O2 Arena after being down 5-1 in the third set. But I'd rather flip that around and just be like, look, Medvedev, who's, by the way, not someone who's really ever short on confidence, so I'm not worried about him, really being intimidated by the prior results against Nadal. Medvedev's nearly beaten him twice in a row. This, to me, the surface favors Medvedev, and I expect Medvedev to likely be a little bit fresher at this point in the tournament. And I have Medvedev getting by Nadal in 4 sets. I have Djokovic getting over the Federer test in 4 sets. I'm expecting really good tennis out of a fresh Roger Federer here in Australia. I'm just expecting a better Novak Djokovic than the Djokovic that Federer beat in Paris, the Djokovic that got past Federer in the Wimbledon final. It's not that I expect a drop-off from Federer. I really do expect good tennis. I just expect a different Djokovic. I don't expect the same Djokovic. I think he's better right now. And ultimately, I still think Djokovic has more offense than Daniil Medvedev, more acceleration off the forehand wing. It just helps him win more quick points, easier. I think he has the edge in the Medvedev matchup. And who knows how spent Medvedev will be at this point in the tournament. But Djokovic over Medvedev in 4 sets. I don't harp on these matches because they may or may not happen. So I'm not going to go in too much detail. But if you have, if anything I said in this preview particularly offended you or caught your ear or whatever it be, remember, every Monday before every major is a full 30 minutes of comment response. So I will see you then. Hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.